Alright guys, so I recently did a review of Indiana Jones 5, and I realized the Critical Drinker has uploaded a video with 1.5 million views in just 4 days. God, I can't wait to be that famous, but I'll be patient and pay my dues. 90% of you are not subscribed. Subscribe if you want to. I'm going to react to the Critical Drinker's review. I'm guessing we're going to disagree on a couple of things, but one thing we can all agree on is that Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny should have been better. It should have been a better movie. I thought it was a fun movie. I enjoyed myself in the theater, but I will never watch it again. Let's see what the drinker has to say.
It might surprise you to know this, but sometimes even the mighty Critical Drinker gets it wrong. Like with Prey, or Suicide Squad, or Dungeons and Dragons, all of which turned out to be a lot better than I predicted from the trailers. But then there's movies like Indiana Jones and the Dial Tone of Density, which proved to be exactly the kind of dumb, bloated, creatively bankrupt, nightmarish disasters I always said they'd be. Sometimes it really does suck to be right. Sitting through all 2.5 hours of this utter garbage was one of the most tedious, frustrating and depressing experiences I've ever had in a cinema. And I'm from Scotland. Put simply, Indiana Jones and the dial-up internet of depravity is an absolute embarrassment of a movie that shames not just the franchise, not just the genre, but the entire concept of filmmaking. It is a complete and utter waste of money and talent made by a shambling wreck of a studio that's basically the Hollywood equivalent of a junkie rifling through his trashed apartment in the hopes of finding one last forgotten stash. It is everything we predicted it would be and much worse. So grab your battered fedora and arthritis meds because we're going in one last time.
Okay, it wasn't that bad. Like the first half, the first half was good. I mean, the Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, yes, she sucks. I in my review, I said how we could change her and make her better. They didn't give her a good arc. Like, she's an a-hole, and then she's still an a-hole, and then at the end, she's an a-hole who did something kind of sort of nice. My biggest gripe with this movie was Indiana Jones just being a sad old man who didn't care. Like, one of the best things about Indiana Jones is that he's having fun and enjoying the adventure, and in this one, not as much. But let's see what...
the first 15 minutes of Dialysis of Dysentery are actually pretty good. The action kicks off in World War II, where a digitally de-aged Indy is working behind enemy lines to recover the Spear of Destiny before it can get shipped back to Berlin. The spear turns out to be a fake in this case, but what isn't a fake is a piece of an ancient artifact known as the Dial of Destiny, built by Archimedes a couple of thousand years ago. A device rumoured to allow the user to travel through time itself. After a bit of fisticuffs, Indy ends up recovering half of the dial from a German scientist named Voller before heading back to America. The whole sequence is fun, action-packed, and the CGI on Harrison Ford is mostly pretty good. Yeah, his face is slightly rubbery at times, and it's pretty obvious they set the whole thing at night to keep him in shadow as much as possible. But for the most part, it kind of felt like an indie movie.
It did, and that was the best part of the movie, to be honest. The ending was anticlimactic as frick. I didn't like I like what they tried to do with the ending, but they didn't do a good job at it. What was I gonna say? I forget.
And Indy is now a broken, depressed old man living alone in a crummy New York apartment, divorced from Marion, about to retire from his job, and with nothing left to live for.
No way!
Fuck me, Lucasfilm, you're really scaling new heights of imagination when it comes to legacy male characters, aren't you? All we need now is for some plucky young female character to come into his life and show him the way.
Yeah.
Called it. This right here is Helena, yet another addition to the growing lineup of brunette, British, flawless, idealized Kathleen Kennedy self-inserts that are better than their aging male counterparts in every possible way. Jesus Christ, and they talk about the male ego. Anyway, Helena's on the trail of the dial and she wants Indy's help tracking it down. Luckily for her, it just so happens to be in the storeroom of Indy's university, but no sooner have they retrieved it than they get ambushed by Voller, who's now a scientist working for NASA. And oh no, Helena bails out and leaves Indy to fend for himself. See, it turns out that all she really wanted to do was take the dial for herself so that she could auction it off for massive profits.
She's a bad person.
You bastard.
Luckily though, Salah shows up and tells Indy that the auction is going to take place in a hotel in Tangiers so that the rest of the plot can happen. Wow, it's lucky that this hotel happens to be the only place on Earth where stolen antiques get bought and sold, and even more lucky that Indy's best friend just so happens to know about it.
What a coincidence.
Shite.
So he goes to Tangiers, and Voller shows up too so that the rest of the plot can happen, and there's more fighting and a car chase that goes on about 15 minutes longer than it needs to, and eventually...
And also, I would say that that car chase doesn't need to be in the movie at all. And it is one of the better parts of the movie. The car chase is good, but it serves no purpose. Like, he could have easily just escaped with her and met the boy and then gone on from there. Because the characters chasing them, her ex-fiancé that she took the ring from and sold because she's a terrible person, they don't come back into the movie. And so the whole chase didn't need to be in the movie, narratively speaking. Now, I had the idea that to make this movie better, you get rid of the kid and you make her fiance the third person in the group. And that allows for interplay and drama between the two. And the chase could actually mean something because instead of it's her fiance and the Nazis chasing them, and they end up having to partner with her fiance to get away, at least then the chase could forward the plot a little bit. But the way they did it here, it doesn't add anything to the story, really. It's just there for action.
Indy and Helena team up and head to Greece to recover a tablet thing from a shipwreck that's going to show them the location of the other half of the dial. Why does all this feel like the plot for Rise of Skywalker all over again? Anyway, Voller shows up again to ambush them. How? Don't know. He just kind of teleports in whenever it's convenient for the plot, I guess. Anyway, there's more fighting, and Indy and Helena escape with the tablet and head to Sicily to recover the second piece of the dial. And yet again, Voller and his men show up to intercept them. How? Well, hold on tight, because this just about made my brain explode in the movie theatre. It's because he grabbed a pair of binoculars and watched them escape the boat ambush, and because they weren't heading in the direction they claimed to be, he magically knew exactly what they were planning and where to find them. Seriously? Fuck off, film. Anyway, so they finally get the second piece of the dial, and of course Voller teleports in to intercept them, and oh no, Indy gets shot, and I guess he's dying now, but the movie never seems to be entirely clear about that. Like, at some points he seems to be at death's door, but then at others he's able to fight and move like he's at full health, so your guess is as good as mine. I mean, given how many times this movie was rewritten and reshot, I'd be willing to bet that the fucking filmmakers didn't even know for sure. Anyway, let's see if we can finish this shit sandwich. So Voller's plan is to use the dial to go back to 1939 and change the course of the war so that Germany wins. But unfortunately, it takes them all back 2,000 years to the time of Archimedes in the middle of a huge battle with the Roman army. So there's yet more fighting, and the plane crashes, and Indy and Helena survive, and he asks to stay in the past so that he can die there. But then Helena says, nah, it'll be fine, and knocks him out and takes him back to 1969 against his will, and then Marion shows up in a scene that feels about as natural and tonally consistent as Pennywise the Clown in an episode of Sesame Street, and then the movie just kind of stops, like it can't think of anything else to do, so it basically just shuffles off the stage. And that's it. That's the plot for Dialect of Dundee. What a fucking incomprehensible
Yeah, the more, so it's a movie that I liked, but that I keep liking less the more I think about it. That ending, like, they should have made it easier for them to find the dial, so they should have gone back in time in the second act, so we could have had a whole third act sequence of him and her running from Nazis and Roman soldiers. That would have been cool. But no, we get the very fascinating, crazy bit for like 10 minutes at the end. And like, yeah, you know, my whole bit is like, why'd you have to make him depressed and sad? Why couldn't you have had a great family life? Because that would have meant given him a lot of motivation to survive and go back. Like, it would have made a lot more sense that way, but no. It has to be dark and depressing.
Of a film this is. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I went into it expecting great things, but Jesus fuck mothering Christ, this was worse than anything I could have imagined. For a start, it's sluggish and horribly paced, running at least 30 minutes too long and built around a protracted fetch trying to do or why, and after a while you pretty much stop caring. Fight scenes are weirdly sluggish, clumsy and badly edited. There's no sense of energy or excitement to any of it, and there's multiple for like 15 minutes each. The first
Yeah.
3 indie movies delivered brilliantly crafted, inventive, and impactful action scenes that knew just when to pull back and give the audience a break, but this one never does. Combined with sloppy CGI, they're more of a chore to get through than an exciting change of pace. And you can absolutely tell that this movie was butchered in the editing bay, reshot and recut multiple times in a desperate attempt to make it work. The result is a hodgepodge of different ideas, plot lines, and aborted character arcs that just kind of meander along with no real sense of progression or development. And as for the ending, it's like they ran out of time and ideas altogether and just had to go with whatever they could cobble together. There's no sense of dramatic payoff here, of carefully developed character arcs getting drawn together into a final fitting conclusion. It's just a rushed and nonsensical, everyone's happy now so deal with it kind of ending. It's no better on the character front either. The antagonists are incompetent and comically useless, and the only reason they keep getting the drop on Indy is because he's equally stupid, and because they can teleport in anywhere they want so that the plot can happen. Voller is a complete non-entity who never comes across as even remotely threatening or interesting. I mean, Mads Mikkelsen is a great actor, but any actor is only as good as the script they have to work with, and I've sharted out better things than this script. Teddy was clearly intended to be a replacement for Short Rounds. Well, if you stripped away all of his personality, charm, and likability, he's there as a kind of sidekick to Helena who can do whatever the plot needs him to, including flying a plane. And I'm not kidding, there's literally a conversation where Helena asks him if he knows how to fly a Cessna, and he replies that he's never flown one before, and then she replies that he's never flown any plane before. Why the fuck did you even ask him then, you absolute Cornish pasty? Jesus, did anyone even read this script before they performed it? But by far the worst offenders are the 2 leads. I actually had second-hand embarrassment for Harrison Ford, watching him labouring away on screen in a movie that clearly resented his very presence. Make no mistake, this is not the Indiana Jones that any of us remember. This absolute imposter is timid, gullible, naive, sad, depressed, and incompetent. I am fucking sick to death of these absolute brainlets posing as writers whose only possible outcome to getting older is turning into a depressed, lonely failure who's given up on life. How is it possible for a studio to hate the very characters that allow them to exist in the first place? And this being a Disney Lucasfilm movie, there's obviously an obligatory strong female character shoehorned into the story of the legacy character they're supposed to replace. And of course she's smarter and stronger and more resourceful than him. Of course she wins every argument and gets proven right about everything and saves the day multiple times.
But she's still a terrible person, and they don't give her a resolving arc. Like, she's a terrible person and she does all this stuff. She's forced to go with Indy, and to be fair, Indiana Jones does say to her, "You need me," and she agrees and takes him with her. And so, like, Indiana Jones it's not completely useless during the movie, but again, like, they didn't resolve her arc at all. She just kind of stopped growing as a character about halfway through, and that she's just there doing things so that they can get to the end of the movie. And you can tell at the end of this movie, spoiler alert, they go back in time and they fight. They don't even fight the Roman army. The Roman army is just there fighting the Greeks. And they basically, Indiana Jones wants to stay back in time. And I'll bet you anything, that was how they were going to get him to pass the torch on to her. In this movie, he chooses to stay back in time. He gives her the hat, and then she goes off Back to the Future and gets a Disney Plus series. But I'm guessing through testing and whatnot, they realized that was a terrible idea, which it is. And they decided to just have her punch him out and take him back with her. And that's how they ended the movie. So the whole setup for the movie to give Indiana Jones somewhat of an emotional arc, and I would agree, that would have been a kind of an emotional ending had he stayed back in time and at least gotten what he freaking wanted out of his life. But obviously they obviously bailed on giving this chick a Disney Plus series, and so they just switched it. She punches him, takes him back with her. So the ending of this movie is really not good. It's worse the more I think about it.
What else could she possibly be in a modern Disney movie? The problem what kind of person it really wants her to be. Is she a cold and callous mercenary, a compassionate and loyal friend, a seductive femme fatale, a lovable con artist trying to scrape by, a quirky joker? The movie doesn't know, so it tries to make her a bit of everything with no real overarching trajectory or motivation, and the results are as meandering and pointless as the rest of the movie. It doesn't really help that Phoebe Waller-Bridge doesn't have the acting range or the qualities needed to play a character like this. She's not charismatic enough to be an adventurer, she's not charming enough to be a rogue, she's not attractive enough to be a femme fatale, and she's not funny enough to be comic relief. She throws punches with all the finesse and expertise of Boogie in his first boxing match, and she runs like a retarded giraffe, all gangly uncoordinated limbs and awkward flat-footed strides. The only time she actually seems at home in the role is when she's pretending to be an earnest, geeky bookworm to con Indy into helping her. And honestly, you probably could have done something with a character like that if you were willing to give her a proper arc. Ultimately, by the time this movie finally ended, my only real thought was, well, that's it then. That's it over. Not just the film, not just the character of Indiana Jones, but in a bigger sense, the very legacy of George Lucas himself. This was it. This was the last property left for them to destroy, and destroy it they did. The cupboards are bare now. They've consumed literally everything that was built up by their predecessors, and now there's nowhere left for them to hide. There's no excuses left to make. This movie is absolutely going to crash and burn, and it deserves to, because maybe then it'll finally force them to accept the truth. They are not creators. They are not capable of making great things like their predecessors did. They're not even capable of making mediocre things. They are destroyers, not creators. And when you run out of things to destroy, well, eventually you'll be next.
Yeah.
Anyway,
My
that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Yeah, my thoughts is that Lucasfilm is going to get completely overhauled. I don't think Kathleen Kennedy is going to be there another contract. You know, her contract ends in 2024. They're probably just going to let her ride that out because she has so many like connections. They always like to save face, right? Let everybody walk away peacefully or step down for personal reasons, you know. None of these big wigs are like gonna get fired or like kicked out. It's like no, they're either gonna like step down due to personal reasons or move on and get a new deal, or you know, like they never let themselves actually like publicly bear the shame. It's always like swept away, and it's like, oh, we did our thing. We're very happy with what we did, and now we get to move on and do this thing. So they're probably everyone's saying, oh, Kathleen Kennedy's gonna get fired. Probably not. No, they're going to let her run out her term. She should be fired. She should have been fired after Rise of Skywalker, to be honest. But no, that's not what they wanted to do. And so, yeah, I don't think they'll fire her. I think they'll probably allow her to save face and allow the company to save face and try to spin it so that there's no way you could spin this movie to being financially successful after the box office disaster that they've just had. You know, only 60 million US in a movie that cost almost 300 million to make. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good at all. But hey, you know what? Everything ebbs and flows, right? You know, there will come a time where new creators are given a shot because all the current ones have run out of ideas and they can't make any more money. And so I do think audiences are overall starting to wake up to the fact that, oh, these movies are kind of trash. You know, with the evolution of shows like The Boys and, you know, House of the Dragon, like really, really good stuff. The more really good stuff that audiences have to compare to the stuff that Disney's putting out, the more they're going to want that, and the less they're going to be willing to pay for what Disney's putting out. And so my whole thoughts on Indiana Jones is it on Disney Plus. Don't spend your money seeing it in theaters. I had fun in theaters, but the more I think about it, the more I realize this movie is just not really all that. You know, it's fun. I smiled, but I'll never watch it again. Like, as when it comes on Disney Plus, I'm not watching it. Go see Mission Impossible 7 instead. That's more likely to be a good time. Anyways, that's all I have for today. Go away, but subscribe first, because if you like movies, well, so do I, so we should be friends. So subscribe.